All right, welcome back. So what we're going to work on next, we've kind of already started doing this movie screen, and we've kind of set up this in a nested scroll view so that this scroll view here, which will have quotes in it to this respective movie, can scroll while the rest scrolls as well. Otherwise, we'd only have, on this size phone, an okay amount of space to scroll. But on a smaller phone, you can imagine, this might take up almost half, in which case, you're not going to have too much screen real estate for your quotes. So let's get into that now. Um, First thing we need to do is open up our quote repository. So we have something just to fetch quotes, and this just hits that endpoint that is basically slash slash quote. It's giving us all the quotes, not for a particular movie, not for a particular character. So what I'd like to do is have another endpoint and another method that we can fetch quotes from a specific movie. So I'm just going to copy this and go fetch, and let's call it fetch movie quotes. And the difference is here, we're going to have a required field, and we want to pass in a movie. So we'll use our movie model, and we'll call it movie. And then in here, instead of hitting slash quote, and this is just based on the docs of our one API dev, which I can get to by going to documentation here. And you'll see that you can go movie slash ID slash quote. That's the movie's ID. So we actually want this to be movie slash ID. This will be something we'll call it movie. We'll just call it ID slash the word quote. Now, in order to get this ID, we can very simply just take our movie object and get its ID. So let's put this in some curly braces because there's .id, and we got movie slash ID slash quote. And that will essentially, everything else should work essentially like exactly the same. It's just going to give us a different resource. Now, I'm going to future-proof this too because I know that we're going to be doing the same for characters. So we're going to just do this here, character, and this will use our character model instead. We'll call it character and make this say character.id character. So just a few small changes there. And that's now we're set up that we can, hit these functions instead, pass in a movie or pass in a character and actually get back things. Okay. Now in our, nothing needs to change in our quote state. Quote will still, our state will still be the same. So that's good. Now in our events, we are going to want some new events. And in fact, I'm going to copy this whole thing and call this anywhere where we said quote in here. Let's do this to make it, and let's call it movie quote. And let's do similar events for character so that we can respond to these differently. Okay, now we have to go to our quote block. And essentially we are going to use a different, we're going to make a whole other block that's very much based on this one for both of these respective things. So we can start by copying this quote block. And this is basically our whole file. So there will be some duplication here, but it'll just keep stuff really simplified than trying to make it react to different things. Because we're still going to quote state, but we're not going to be working with quote events, that kind of stuff. So we're going to call this movie quote block. And I'm just going to copy movie to my clipboard because we're going to want to do a few other things. We're still going to use the quote repository. We're no longer responding to quote events. We're responding to movie quote events. Movie quote block. Going through here, we want the movie quote event, but still quote state. Movie quote event is our events, and movie quote event here. And all that looks good. Then we're still returning a quote state, but we are going to be working with the movie quote events. Now our event names are different now. I'm just going to zoom this a bit. our movie names are, our event names is movie quote fetched and movie quote reset fetched. So there we go. And we can keep these function names the same. We just need to know where we're making these changes. So instead of fetching quotes, we want to fetch movie quotes. Okay. Now you're seeing there's an issue here because it's expecting us to put in a positional argument of movie. So how do we get that? Now we can get that when we actually construct this block. So we're going to go final movie model movie, and we will make this also required, this dot movie. So basically we can't create this block without passing in a particular movie. Okay, fetch movie quote. So now we can just do this dot movie, comma, page 1. And that is basically us just hitting this function here that we just made a moment ago. Similarly here, we want this to be fetch movie quotes. And we have to pass in this dot movie. And I think mostly everything else is good, but let's just double check. Movie quote event, quote state, just making sure there's no more events that are different, but I think we are good. Quote state, yeah. Okay, we're good there. Now we'll also need to do this for character, but I will do that off stream because it's the exact same pattern, just different little thing. There, I just took our copied that and just did one for character. It's the same, just instead of movie, we're using character. And we've already created those events. Yeah, we have character folks, we have character quote events, and they're two things. So we're good there. Okay, let's go back to our UI side now that everything is set up on the block side. So back to our movie detail screen. We have this list view. It is, obviously not showing us quotes yet. So how can we do that? So this is a pattern that we've already kind of done before, just a little bit different because we are doing it in within this detail screen now. So what we want to do is, instead of this list view, we want to pass in a body of block provider. And we're going to be using the movie quote block. That's the new block we just made. And we run a create function. And it's going to be movie quote block. We construct it there. And we still have to pass in the repository, but we're also going to pass in a movie this time. Now we have access to the movie because it's part of this widget here. So we can just go this dot movie. Then for repository, we will use the quote repository and pass in do. And that needs to be imported. This probably needs to be imported. And we're still getting a complaint, but I think it's because we're still missing some stuff here. So after we have this create, what we want to do is chain on just an add to essentially tell it, hey, we want to actually go and fetch these. So we have that event, movie quote event, movie quote fetched is what we want to call. And let's just see if we make a child of container here. Oops. Let's find out what this error is about. Movie quote block can't be assigned to the parameter type movie quote block function build context. Okay. Right. So in our create is actually a builder function. So we actually have to call it like this. Builder function. Okay. And I'm going to add in a few commas here just to make everything indent nicely. So there we have our block provider and then a child of container, which is right here. Now, what we're going to do is, rather than making the list kind of be part of this, we're going to make a new widget to handle everything to do with the list. That way it could live in another file. Speaking of other files, let's move our stat object to its own file for two reasons. One, it will just keep this file a little bit cleaner. And two, we will probably be using this on other screens. So there's no point that it should only be part of this screen. So I'm going to put that on my clipboard and we'll just call it stat.dart. And it should be as simple as just pasting it in and doing some imports. So if we import this, we should get mostly everything else. Yeah, looks like we do. So we have that. Now this is going to be complaining now because it has no idea what this stat thing is. So we can just auto import it and we're all good. Okay, so I'm going to make a new stateless widget here called movie quote list. And actually, it is going to be a stateful widget, so we can just refactor it really quickly to that. Now, one thing that that we want is we want to be able to pass in. Do we need to pass in the movie? I don't think we do need to pass in. I don't think we have to pass in a movie for this. We'll figure out if we do. Because really, like, we're going to be passing in the movie. Yeah, it happens up here. I don't think we actually need to pass in the movie, so let's not worry about that. Okay, so we are doing a stateful widget. We do need that paging controller because this is going to use the infinite scroll as we did in the last couple of videos. So final paging controller, and it's going to, we're going to have an int as the key and a quote model as the actual thing that's iterated through. We'll just call it paging controller. And we want to make sure our first page key is 1. We want to start at page 1. Then we're going to create a variable, a late variable, and it's going to be a movie quote block. And we'll just call it movie quote block. There we go. Okay, in our init state, we need to grab this guy and essentially say, hey, we want you to be reading the context.read, but we want to tell it what context. It's going to be reading movie quote block, sorry. Then with our paging controller, and we've done all this stuff before, then we want to basically dispatch an event, movie quote fetched, anytime we get to the next page. There we go. Let's also do a dispose while we're at it. And I just want to make sure that before we dispose, we also dispose our paging controller to free up some memory and keep things clean. Okay. All right. Now, just as a reference, let's look back at our movie list screen, because this part's going to be mostly the same. We essentially had a block listener, and within a block listener. We had a child of that's the block builder. And this does the, depending on what status we're in, show an error or show a circular progress indicator or actually show the data. So in some ways, I can probably just copy a lot of this stuff over rather than trying to retype it. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to just grab from block listener, and this should close right at the end. Yeah. From all the way from here. And let's paste that there. Now we're going to have some lovely issues because stuff isn't imported, but that's really simple to do. Let's import most of this stuff. Now there are, oh, you know what? Better idea. To make this cleaner, we should actually be grabbing this from our quote list because we're showing quotes. So why not use the thing that's closest to what we've already done? So we'll put that in. We will import the things that are needed. There we go. And this is actually called movie quote block. So let's call it that. And this needs to be movie quote reset fetched. And quote card, I thought we have that, right? Quote card, we must because it was working over there. And there we go. Now I'm going to save. This may or may not work. Let's do a refresh. Now, one thing about this API is they actually don't have quotes on any of the Hobbit books / movies. So we just have to make sure we pick something like the Two Towers. And there we go. Okay, nothing's showing up, but I think we are pretty close. Let's open up our network and see if there's at least a call happening. So I'll just refresh the app. Oh, yeah, I know one thing that we missed. We made this awesome widget, right? We made this movie quote list, but we never actually made it a child of our block provider. So that's whether or not that's our problem. That's definitely one of the problems. There we go. So we have, I mean, something's kind of happening. Let's go here. We're obviously getting an error. So quote block. So it's looking like we messed something up with our, we probably have a quote block instead of a movie quote block. So let's copy this. And I bet somewhere in here, because we did copy and paste, which can save you time, but can also, create these kind of errors. So these shouldn't be quote blocks. These should be movie quote blocks. Hopefully those are the only two spots. And it looks like it was. Okay, one other thing, you'll see there's kind of this extra space here. And we just need to, in our, wherever our page list view, so we can just do padding edge insets.0. That's just something you have to do when you're doing nested, and whether it's page scroll view or just a normal list view, it'll automatically sort of add this padding, and you can go like this, and then it's gone. So it works. It's nice. It scrolls with us. Let's see what's going on there. We could also, this API will rate limit us. So if you are trying this on your own, sometimes data might not load, and it could. If you look at your network request, you might see that you have an error because of rate limiting, which just means they don't want you hitting the API, so often. And usually, when you're developing things, you're hitting it more often than a normal user would. So here we go. We have this stuff. Everything scrolls. It is pretty nice. I'm going to copy over everything right now that we just did for characters. So we have our character list already, but we don't have a character detail view. I'm going to bring that over because it's virtually the same as the movie one, and we can walk through it really quickly. All right, it just took me a few minutes. I paused the stream for a minute and just created the character detail screen, which is essentially a derivative of the movie detail screen. I'll give you a quick look. One thing, just to save time, I'm only putting 2 of the stats. So you'll see we have race and gender. According to their API, there is a lot more things we could have, such as sometimes we have a birth year, sometimes there's it's like spouse, that kind of stuff. And I'll let you play around with that if you want. But I've copied that over, and we also still have this quote list screen that was just copied and changed. I realized this says movie quote block. Let's just rename this. It actually doesn't matter because it's just a reference to a random variable name, but it's nice to keep it clean. I don't think I missed any. There we go. You'll see we're getting this empty state, and that's actually just because many of these characters in the database don't have any people or any quotes associated with it. So we could scroll through and look for one that we know. Let's do it real quick and just make sure it's working. I actually haven't even tested if it's working, so hopefully it will. I think I saw. You know what, let's wait for the surprise. Let's not even try and find Gandalf right now. How could we find Gandalf? That's the thing, like scrolling takes a long time. What if we had a way to search these sort of things? And luckily their API does allow searching. So we can actually pass up something like character name equals Gandalf to get back anything like that. So let's add that functionality now. So first of all, actually, before we do that, let's add a fun little easier thing. I want to add some actions here. So just like an app bar, we can have actions on the Sliver app bar. And we're just going to do an icon button, and on pressed, let's just do that for now. And we'll use icons dot open in new is what I want to use. Let's just see how that looks. Character list. I'm on the detail screen. So I'm going to just click on any random person, and you'll see there's this thing here. Now what we can do is our model, the character model, has something called a wiki URL associated with it. So first of all, let's just make sure before we show that button that it exists. So we can just do within this array if character widget, because we're in the stateful widget, .character .wiki URL does not equal null. Not that. What we want to say is not empty because it can't be null. It's a null safe thing. It will just default to an empty string. We only want to show this, so let's see. It's still there, so I think we're okay. Now we want to open it. Now the package I like to use for this is called Flutter URL Launcher. and we will add that. Pub or Flutter pub add URL launcher. This allows us to open up URLs in like an in-app browser. And it's very easy to work with. You just go launch, and that would have imported this file, URL launcher, and then we pass in the URL. So we just want to use this. Now this will require a full rebuild because that library does require some native elements. So I'm going to stop the app, and I'm going to rebuild, and I will pause for a moment as it will take a few minutes. All right, now that my build has completed, I haven't changed any code or anything, but we can just click on one of these, and you'll see that this link now will open in-app browser, Safari, of this URL. And I haven't gone through and seen which ones maybe don't have any, but here we are. So that's working. So next thing I want to do is a search, allow people to search by character. I don't think we need a search for movies because there's only so many. I think I'm getting rate limited right now is what this looks like, so we'll be careful for a moment. I'm going to open up my network and see. In terms of the server-side part, we are using a third-party API, which is nice because it makes your life easy to get something going, but you do have downsides of this. Like I'm getting, you'll see in the response, too many requests, please try again later, which is what I assumed this was. So we'll be working again in a moment, but that doesn't stop us from writing a bit more code. Now I'm planning on in the future doing a separate series, maybe even just 1 or 2 videos about more the server side part of this. And I want to essentially kind of rebuild this API in Fast API based on the same data that's there. So if you are interested in more full stack development and sort of the backend API side of things, definitely check that out. And I'll update this video description if and when that is available. Okay, so yeah, I want to make a search. So we're going to go to our list screen, character list screen. And essentially at the top of our list, which hopefully I can show you without it's getting a little bit mad, but at the top of our list, we're going to have a search bar so that you can type something and then submit your search, and it will update the results. We're going to keep this pretty simple for just to kind of show the purposes of or the way you would do something like this. So first of all, I want to make this its own component, and the reason I want to do that is I don't want, this, we're going to be having some stuff in memory and doing some state changes, and I don't want this whole widget to rebuild when a state change happens. So there's a few ways to do it, but the easiest way is just create a widget with its own state so that it can kind of update and do its thing without affecting the rest of your screen. So we're going to do that. We'll just make it a stateful widget because it will be stateful, I believe. Let's just make it stateless. We'll make it stateful when we need to. So stateless widget, we're going to call it search input. And there we go. Okay, our search input, we want to require a couple things here. Specifically, just a function of on submit. So when the search is submitted, we want to talk back to our guy here. And let's make that a required field, but still within here, required this dot on submit. And I like for doing a search fields, I like using a list tile, which we've seen before. We've used it for some of our cards, some of our movies and character cards. And list tiles don't have to just be text. For instance, we can actually give it a title of a text form field. Our text form field, this is where we'll allow people to type in. So we do need a controller to manage. So I'm going to make something called controller, and it's going to be a text editing controller. There we go. This can no longer be a constant because we're passing something in. And let's see, so we're going to have a text form field. We're going to pass the controller of that controller we just made. We're going to make a decoration, which is a type input decoration. And inside here, let's give it some hint text so people know what to type in here. And we can just say search, maybe with some dots. And this will, because of material design, automatically have a border on the bottom. I don't really want that border because it's going to look weird, kind of nudged up against something else. So what we have to do is set an enabled border equal to input border dot none, and we can do the same for disabled for focus border. So we could also do one for disabled border, but I'm not planning on having any reason to disable this, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, what else do we want? We want to do something on editing complete, and we're going to, I'll just put something like this for now so that we can kind of call a function when you finished editing. All right, so that's kind of our form field. Also in this list tile, let's have a trailing icon button. Icon on pressed, and we'll also stub that in there. And the icon itself will be an icon with icons.search. Cool. And that deals with that. So now how do we want to handle, what do we want to do on submitting? Well, let's just make a function because there's two ways we can submit, right? You can do it by the enter key on your keyboard, this on editing complete, or by pushing this button. So we're going to make a function and we're going to call it handle submit. We'll an underscore handle submit. And here we want to do two things. First of all, we want to call the on submit function that's passed in. So we can go this dot on submit, and we can go controller dot value dot text. That'll pass in this this string of whatever's in your thing right now. And then I also, after you submit a search, let's also clear the controller so that it doesn't, so that it is cleared again for another use. And then we can just replace this and replace this. Now we're getting a little error here. Search input is already defined. Oopsie. Did something weird here. One sec. Okay, we are good. I just had search input declared twice for some reason. Okay, so let's see if our rate limiting is, if we're better now. It looks like we're fine. So if we go back here, we're not going to see any difference because we've only created this. We need to, of course, now put this as part of this. So I only want it to show up when, we actually have a success. If it was to show up around the whole thing, you'd have a search and it would just say error and it wouldn't make sense. So we're going to take our page list view and we're actually going to wrap it in a column. Then we're going to wrap our page list view in a expanded widget so that it takes up as much room as it can once we have something else above it. Then we're going to take our search input and go like this, and it is requiring us to put in an on submit function. Now what that is going to do is something we'll do in a little bit. For now, let's because we're passing in that value when we call this from the other widget, let's just print out what it is and make sure stuff's working. So let's save. Then you'll see we have this search. Now let me show you what I meant about these borders, just why it kind of looks funny. So if you have this, if you don't have that code there, you kind of get like this line under it. I mean, it's not horrible. Maybe I even like it. But I don't. I think it kind of looks not as clean, especially because it doesn't go the whole way across, and that's just the way the list tile works. So I think this is good. So let's do that. So if I was to search something and click this, we see, okay, my result came in. Now I'm going to open up my keyboard and type something, which I have to do this way when it's open. And I'm going to click done just to make sure that it also fires it, and it does. So we are good there. Let me get rid of that development keyboard. Cool. All right. Next up is we want this search to actually do something functional. So now we could do something where we sort of update this view to reflect that stuff, but then we have to deal with now cancel it, like clearing your search. We're going to keep this simple because it still gets the main thoughts across. We're actually going to make a new screen for search results, and we'll just navigate to that. So let's make that screen now. Here we're going to do, let's call it character search results screen.dart. And we'll start with the stateless widget, although I'm sure it might change. Character search results screen. And we'll start really simply with just having a scaffold. And let's auto import that. And let's give it an app bar. And title can be search results. That needs to be wrapped in text. And let's just connect the dots here. So we're going to go here, and on our in our submit function, which is right here, we were just printing. Let's get rid of that print, and let's do a navigator.ofContext.push. And we want to push a material route, material page route with a builder. And we're going to call this builder and invoke character search results screen. I think I'm missing maybe one guy here. There we go. And let's just see if that even works. So we'll just type something and go like this, and we get search results. Cool. Now, it might be nice if we expect a query to come in here. We'll call it query. It's going to be of type string. And we need to make sure that it's going to be required. So we'll just put it here, this dot query. Right. And then we're going to have an error over here because it's expecting something. So that's where we're going to pass in this value that we are recently printing. Then to see if that's working, let's actually make the title of this widget, or just, query, this dot query. So now if I type in some random letters and go here, you see it came up over here. So that's all working as we would like. Okay, now this next part is quite similar to all the other list views. Like essentially we're just going to be making a, we're going to be having another list view, but just limiting those responses. But let us do some stuff here. So we want to, we have this endpoint just to fetch characters, but we need to make another one that will allow us to search for characters. So let's set that up now. So I'm going to copy this because it is pretty simple. And we're going to call this, instead of fetch, we'll call it search characters. And this is going to require us to put in a query. We'll do required query. And what we want to do is essentially pass in something here, and it will be according to their API docs. We do name equals this. Now we have to do a little bit differently. If we do name equals this, their API is actually case sensitive. If you typed a lowercase g, it wouldn't actually respond, but they allow you to do a regex. So what we can do is essentially whatever our word is. They're using foot as an example here. We do name equals /, then whatever our query is, then /I, which in regular expression means it's not going to be a case sensitive, and I think it'll also allow like fuzzy, not like quite fuzzy results, but not complete. You know, the name is exactly Gandalf. It could be Gand, and we'll get stuff back. So in order to do that, we're going to do the key of name, and the value will be /$ query, because that's just how we get that query variable. Then a variable. Then you have that, and then we do that I. So that's exactly what is right here. So we'll do that, and then we can still hit the same endpoint, and everything will be good. So we have our search and everything. Now, looking at this now, we could probably refactor this to, and let's do it. Let's do it. Instead of having a whole other function, what we could allow is a string, and this will be optional, of string, sorry, we just do it like this, string, let's just call it query. Okay, now, how do you, oh yeah, there should be a question mark there because we're going to allow this to be optional. And what we could do here is, instead of making this final, let's make this a variable we could change. And I'm just going to call it then map string dynamic params. So we invoke it like that instead of just final. And then we can go if query does not equal null, we can take our params and equal them to ... params, and that just essentially takes whatever we have in params and flattens it in there. And then we can take the same code that we just did. And I think we still call this query. So if query is not null, we're going to add in this right here, and everything else should work the same. So let's get rid of our search character functionality. Okay, so we've set that up now. Okay, going into our events, we do need a new type of event now. So let's make an abstract. In fact, we're gonna copy this. I'm not gonna worry about the reset. We're not gonna let people reset their search. There's not really a need for that. And if you wanted to, you should know how to do it. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna call it the character search event, and character search fetched, which needs to extend this. All right, so we have our event. So that we can trigger that. And then we also want our character block. We're going to have to create a another thing here. So we're essentially going to take this same character block, and we've kind of done this before, and we're going to copy it to make one for doing search. Now it is very much the same like we've done before. So I am going to copy it and kind of replace some things in it. So let's copy that now. And this would be called character search block. Essentially, I'm going to, just like we did before, I'm going to go through and copy and paste and change these things accordingly. I will do that while paused and come in a minute. All right, so I brought this in, changed everything to search block, and using the search events. It's still going to be character states. This is much like that refactor or copy and paste we did for quote and character quote and movie quote. There is one difference we have to make here, though. We want, instead of fetching characters, well, we're still going to fetch characters, but we need to pass in that query, right? So in order to do that, when we instantiate this, I've added in a query string here. So we are going to be expecting a string and making it required. That way over here, we can, where is it? We can run fetch characters and then pass in this query. So that's kind of the only little difference I had to do, was add that and then add in, passing in that same query that we have. So let's save this file. And we did, something crashed, but that's okay. So we have that. We're going to go to our screen now. Let me make sure we didn't miss anything. I don't think so. We did stuff in the block. We did the event, character search event. So let's go to our UI. Okay, so in our UI, we are going to have obviously a body of this, and let's just go to this screen. There we go. So in our body, let us create a block provider once again. And oh, I realize there's a semicolon here. This should be part of that. There we go. Block provider. And because I'm rebuilding the app right now, stuff's a little bit slower. There we go. Okay, block provider. Import for me, please. Block provider. And this block is going to be the character search block, that new one that we just made. And inside here, we need to create a create function, ctx. And oops, and we're going to use character search block. And inside here, it is expecting us to pass in two things, the query, because remember in our character search block, which I don't think got auto-imported. So query, we want to send up this .query, which is this guy here. And then we want that, and we need our repository, and that is going to be the character repository do, and we need to import do. And I see why there might be some issues. I did not have a colon there. Okay, and then when we actually instantiate this search block, let's add our initial event, which is going to run the character search fetched event. Let's clean this up by adding some commas. And it's almost looking good to me, but not quite. That's better. Okay, lastly, we definitely need a child on this, and this is going to be something that we're going to make similar to what we have done before. So let's grab let's go to our character list and see what we can reuse there rather than trying to type this all out again. So we already kind of have this guy here, this character list. Let's just take a look. Yeah, so we're gonna just grab this guy. Yeah, let's grab this guy. He's gonna be a component that's in here, and let's just rename it so there's no conflictingness. We'll call it character search list. And we need to make sure we put search in here. And then character search list state, character search list. Okay, and then we need to import some stuff. And we'll close this guy. We'll close this guy, and we'll just work in here. We need to. I don't think we even need that. I'm gonna get rid of that. We need to import this. There, it found it. And let's see if there's any other things. We don't need, so I copied this from something that has this search input. We definitely don't need a search input on our search screen. I mean, we could, because then you could do something where you update it, but I'm not going to worry about that. So we can get rid of this expanded to, remove this widget, and we can get rid of this column by going remove this widget. We need to import our character card. And I'm also just not going to worry about having a refresh indicator on this page because it's just not necessary. So let's just remove this widget. I'm also just going to stop this thing from spinning, hopefully. There we go. Okay, now some other things we have to change in here real quick is just we're not actually adding character fetched. We're adding character search fetched, I think is what it was called. Character search fetched. And it's complaining, and that's because it is reading character block. We want to be reading character search block. Okay, so that's a good start. This should be also character search block. There we go. Now, same with this. Instead of character block, it's the character search block, and character model. I think everything else is probably good. Let's find out. Let's go to characters. I'll be happy if this works. Let's just search for Gandalf. There we go. Okay, so we have an issue here. Something. Oh, wait. we need to actually finish this. So let's just go and do that. Ah, it did work. I didn't think it would on the first try, but we searched Gandalf, hit enter, and we got this. And this is how we can finally test if the quotes worked, and they did, because we found a resource in here that actually had quotes. So there you have it. We have movies, we have characters, we have quotes, and we have the ability to look at a movie and see their quotes, look at a character, and see their quotes. You can search for a character. Let's look for our good friend Frodo. There we go. There's actually Frodo Baggins and Frodo Gardner. And here's all of his lovely quotes with the infinite scroll. So there you have it. That is it for this series. I'm hoping to do a similar one on the back end side of this because, for instance, I'd say one of the real downsides of this API is the fact that I can't, with the quotes, we can't even really say who said them other than in the context of looking at a particular character and seeing their quotes. And that's just because their API, the way it responds, it doesn't send you back a serialized, version of the character or even the character's name. It's a reference to another character, meaning if we wanted to display that character name, we'd have to essentially, when you boot up the app, call this list view for every single page and store that in memory and then be able to look it up. And what I'd like to do in the future is actually kind of based on the same data set, rebuild their API to have a little more functionality like the serialization so that when we get a quote back, we know who it is. And because the quote has a reference to the movie and has a reference to the character, but not easily accessible without making a future or a concurrent API call, which can get really heavy because imagine coming here and us having to make an API call for every single quote to be like, who is that person if we don't already have it in memory. There are ways to do it. You could, in theory, if their database was never changing, you could just sort of have some of this rasterized in your app code base, like a key value pair of IDs to names. But I'd rather in the future kind of build a better version of their thing. And you can kind of see that if we search on their page for, I think they have a link to their GitHub somewhere. I would think it would be maybe on their homepage. Glimpse at the documentation. Oh, here we go, the GitHub link. So we can see on their GitHub, they actually have this in an open source sort of project. So, and we could do this a couple different ways. We could, actually kind of just build something to completely call all the data, their API, and structure it the way that we want it. Or we could actually they have a CSV of all this sort of stuff, and we could just parse this. And I think that's likely what we'd be after on the Python side of this tutorial. But that is something for another day. Thanks for watching.